I brew beer for a few reasons. One, it tastes good, and I like beer. Another reason is I like the enjoyment that other people get from drinking my beer. In the end, it's just an enjoyable beverage that brings people together, and good times and bad times we can have a pint and talk and be friends, or just cry, laugh, whatever it is. It's just part of the beer world. So yeah, cheers. Beer has this great combination of having a great family out here, and at the same time bringing in new family, that's the community, the town, into that same place. So you have behind the scenes a family working to make sure that the product, in this case beer, is great, and then getting that product to the local community. And that's kind of, we opened CIBOLO Creek Brewing, that was one thing we really wanted to put a focus on, is that we wanted this to be a meeting point for the community. Like, whether it's you're coming with your family or by yourself, it didn't matter. Come, sit down, relax, maybe meet a new friend, hang out by yourself, hang out with your family, hang out with a big group of people, just to be a relaxed atmosphere, because that idea / ethos is just part of the greater world of beer. And another reason that I love making it, as well as drinking craft beer, is because we realize that even though there's this explosion in growth of craft beer, in the scheme of things, it's really still a small percentage of the overall market. So the more we can work together to get more people drinking craft beer, the better it is for all of us. It's just exciting time to be a part of this craft brewery world. First thing to know is the grain. So typically, beer is made with barley. To get the sugars out of the barley, the first thing you have to do is run it through a mill. There's different types of mills, but essentially the idea is the same. You crack the grain, and you expose the endosperm. We do that, X amount of grain drops into what we call the hopper. Then from the hopper, there's an auger system that pushes all that milled grain up into the next step, which is what we call the mash. Idea behind the mash is you have the grain dropping into the mash tun. At the same time, you're blending that with warm water, usually 150 to 160 degrees, to try to achieve an overall temperature of 147 to 155, somewhere in that range. If you're on the upper end of that, meaning warmer, the beer is going to be a little sweeter. So a stout or a porter might be on the higher end. If you're looking for a drier beer, that's going to be on the lower end. And that all has to do with just the conversion of those starches and carbohydrates into sugars. So it takes about 20 minutes. We get all the grain, water mixed into the mash tun, and then we wait about 60 minutes. And during that 60 minutes, we're converting that into the wort. That's the next step, is the drain and sparge. And basically you're taking that liquid now off the grain and taking it into the kettle. Again, that's roughly about an hour process, and there's different methods to do it, but the idea is the same for both. So another hour goes by, now we have a large amount of liquid in the kettle, and now we start the boil. Boil does a few things. It converts the sugar into a more edible source for the yeast, which we'll talk about in a second, and at the same time, it's where you would add hops and/or herbs if you're not using hops, which generally are to balance the sweetness of the wort. So in an IPA, more hops. In a blonde or a Hefeweizen, not very many hops, just enough to balance it. This boil can be anywhere from 60 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes. Again, we now have a boil, wort's boiling, add hops at different times. If you add them at the beginning of the boil, it's purely for bitterness. As you get closer to what we call flame out, or the end of the boil, then it's more about flavor and nose, meaning aroma. Once the boil is done, for big breweries, you do something called a whirlpool, anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes. Today we're working on IPA, so it'll be 40 minutes, so on the longer end of the whirlpool spectrum. So the next stage is called the knockout. So the KO, the cool down, different words for it. And so what we're trying to do is take boiling or just under boiling wort and knock it down, cool it down to a temperature that's okay for the yeast to ferment in. And then that wort's coming out at the temperature we want it. And that wort then goes into the fermenter. So wort's going in, takes 20 to 40 minutes depending on the style, goes into the fermenter, and while the fermenter's filling up, you pitch, which means you put in your yeast, and very strong beer takes more yeast, a less strong beer, obviously less yeast. So pour your yeast in, finish filling it up, and then essentially then the fermentation process starts. That can take anywhere from 5 to 8 days for ales, lagers up to 14 days. That's for the primary, so the first fermentation stage. Then once fermentation is done, you have to drop the temperature down and basically empty out the waste, again called trub, out of the bottom. That just goes down the sink, generally a waste product. Once that trub's out, then we can start the final process, which is carbonation. Carbonation can either be done in the fermenters, or we can transfer it over to our serving tanks, also called bright tanks. And once they're over there, we'll finish the carbonation process, and then next step is pouring a pint and you drinking it down. That's it. We want people to feel comfortable to come here by themselves and maybe sit down at the bar or one of our community tables and meet someone new. At the same time, a family is going to come and just hang out in our beer garden and let their kids run around, listen to some music. But in part, it's all centered around the beer production, and whether or not you even drink beer. You might have some of your family does. You might just come here because you like the environment, but it's still the centerpiece of the idea is around beer and craft beer. And that's one of the main reasons I love beer. We'll keep making it until I can.